We want to make it clear that Indiana is open for business. We want to make it clear that Hoosier hospitality is not a slogan, it's our way of life.
And that, of course, is Indiana Governor Mike Pence, and he's trying to rehabilitate his state's image in a major way. We know it's taken quite a beating on Twitter and Facebook, to say the least. Now, Indiana's religious freedom law, well, it looks like it's going to be rewritten, and rewritten soon. The governor who signed the bill into law says he's now sending it back to the state legislature. The law allows businesses to practice their religious beliefs, and individuals for that matter, but the LGBT community says it opens the door for discrimination, especially against their community. Indiana small business owner Kristen Cohn, she joins us now, and criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Now, Kristen, many big-name companies, have publicly bashed the law. And to name a few, let's talk about it. Angie's List, Apple, Salesforce. So, Kristen, as a small business owner, what effect has this law had on you and your business?
I feel as though this law tarnishes the reputation of any business in Indiana, and certainly we're concerned about the economic impact that will have on Indianapolis as a city and businesses growing their companies here, hosting conventions and events here. So we're very concerned about it.
Absolutely. And on your Twitter page, Kristen, you're advertising that you, of course, serve everyone. Now, tell us about the Open for Service campaign that's going on now.
The Open for Service campaign is a movement that was started about 3 or 4 weeks ago and is simply a way for businesses to advertise the fact that when someone walks through our door, they will not be discriminated against. It's sort of reinforcing what we've been doing for 15 years, welcoming everybody who walks through our doors, every visitor to Indianapolis, every resident of Indianapolis, and we certainly want to make it clear that everyone will continue to always be welcome at our business.
Absolutely, Kristen, and I'm sure you've heard the governor's statement. Governor Pence this morning, he had a press conference. He spoke about the law in detail and also talked about the fact that he'll fix the bill. Could you react to that? What can they do to make it better?
From what I understand, Governor Pence said that he would make sure that the bill did not allow business to discriminate, but he also continues to refuse to make our LGBT community a protected class in the state of Indiana. So I still think it's not enough.
I get that, absolutely. And I want to bring in Brian Claypool, exceptional criminal defense attorney, certainly a good friend. Brian, let me ask you, let's talk about the legalese and the necessity of this bill and what it does. I mean, give us your, understanding of why it's getting so savage. Don't 19 other states have a similar law? Doesn't the federal government have a law that's similar? Or maybe not?
Well, Joey, here's the big problem. In order to understand how to change the state law in Indiana to make it more clear, you need to look at the root of the problem, which was the federal law in 1993. Now, I've looked at it very carefully, and it's very, very broad. In the context of the federal law that Clinton signed in 1993, dealt with issues unrelated to discriminating against the gay community. It dealt with things like a tribal community that didn't want to pay federal taxes because of religious rights. It dealt with 2 gentlemen in Oregon who took vacation due to religious belief, and then the state of Oregon didn't want to pay them unemployment benefits. That was the genesis of the law in 1993. Now what we're having happen is states like Indiana, 19 other states, they're trying to mirror that broad language from 93 and use it as a pretext or a launching board to allow businesses to discriminate against gay and lesbian folks. And what we need to do to eliminate this problem is easy. You make it clear in this new bill in Indiana and all the other 19 states that you can't just discriminate against gay folks because they're gay. In other words, you make it clear what is not allowed, and that the state has a compelling interest, like Kristen said, to allow the commerce to flow throughout the community. So you got to make the law more clear.
Brian,
Absolutely.
Kristen, there are people out there that do support this law the way that it is. I spoke to someone earlier. His name is Jason, and he talked about how this may open up a conversation that people may be uncomfortable having. Let's take a listen to that, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, it begins a conversation. Obviously, language is everything, at least the starting place, when it comes to finding consensus among the people and also finding boundaries for the way we live with one another. So we have to get the terms out there. We have to get some boundaries of discussion out there, and this legislation is a foundation for that.
So, Kristen, you know, you first being a resident and a small business owner, is there a way to play devil's advocate here that we need to still have the conversation about retaining religious freedoms? Because ultimately, there are people that do have religious restrictions that they want to be able to exercise within their own communities and feel comfortable doing so.
You know, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to discuss, you know, religious freedoms and protections for our government.
Brian, let me switch to you,
Yeah.
Brian, on the issue of sexual orientation. Let's address that. I think one of the big concerns here was that Indiana does not protect people on the basis of sexual orientation. If legislation was passed along that regard, do you think that'll resolve the issue?
Yes, that would help. That would help solve the problem. But a lot of people have to understand, Joey, that just because there is this law in Indiana, there has to still be a court review. In other words, let's say a business comes in and says, well, I'm not going to bake that cake for the lesbian couple that's getting married. Well, if that couple files a lawsuit, the court has to do a balancing test. And what I was talking about earlier is the state then has to have a compelling interest to stop the bakery from doing that. And my argument is the compelling interest is twofold: to promote equality, that these folks are part of a protected class, and secondly, the compelling state interest is commerce. You're going to kill commerce throughout the country if you're going to allow these types of laws.
But quickly, and I know, Joey, I know we got to go to break, but quickly, isn't there a way to retain religious freedom along with also protecting civil rights of every single human being that deserves that protection?
That's the great question, Yasmin, and that's the balancing act that will have to be done moving forward, because this is having a devastating effect on the business community. And certainly we want people like Kristen Cohn's business and others like her who are doing so much for Indiana to prosper. But that's only going to happen if the legislature gets it right and becomes more inclusive so that everyone can buy in. Kristen Cohn, we appreciate you joining us so much. Brian Claypool, we know you're sticking around with Yasmin and myself, so thanks so much to you too. Okay? Coming up, the pursuit of an armed and dangerous fugitive led to door-to-door searches.
This morning, an intense manhunt underway for an inmate who escaped during a hospital transfer.
Cops in Virginia are searching for a prisoner who stole a guard's gun and escaped while wearing only a hospital gown.
Around 3 o'clock this morning, a struggle took place where Mr. Asai and private security guards wrestled over one of the weapons that the security guards had.
Now, the gun went off while the two were struggling over it. Nobody was injured.
Mr. Asai then took control of the weapon and fled the hospital.
Cops say the prisoner stole a car and may now be with his girlfriend.
All right, welcome back. A desperate manhunt. It's now over. Police captured the armed inmate who escaped in Nova Fairfax Hospital in Virginia, west of Washington, D.C. He was there after trying to harm himself in jail. Wusan Usay is facing charges of armed robbery, but now he's even in more trouble. He stole a gun from a security guard and fled in nothing but a hospital gown. The Fairfax County Police Chief described how it all played out. Take a listen.
On March 27th, Mr. Hasser attempted suicide in his cell. He was then eventually transported to Inova Fairfax Hospital for treatment of his self-inflicted injuries. While at the hospital, the United States Marshal Service that coordinated the transportation had a private security contracted firm maintain custody of Mr. Hasser. At 3 o'clock this morning, Mr. Hasser got into a struggle with one of the security guards, and a round was discharged from the security guard's weapon. It's unknown at this time who fired the round, but fortunately no one was reported to be injured. Mr. Hasser then fled with the weapon into a nearby residential neighborhood, where he then broke into the trunk of a resident's vehicle. The resident came out of their house and was proceeding to commute to work. While commuting to work in the area of the hospital, Mr. Hasser started to kick out the back seat from inside the trunk. The vehicle then crashed, and Mr. Hasser then committed a carjacking of the vehicle and fled with the vehicle. The driver of the vehicle was slightly injured and treated. Mr. Hasser then fled in an unknown direction. At the same time that we were looking for the vehicle, we were methodically going through every single building at the campus of Inova Fairfax Hospital. We then, around 10:30 this morning, found Mr. Sayre's car in the Annandale area abandoned. Mr. Sayre then carjacked a second car and fled the area. The Fairfax County Police has recovered the first vehicle that was carjacked, including what we believe to be the security guard's weapon inside the car. Moments ago, in the District of Columbia, in the 6th Police District, an alert community member identified Mr. Sayre through all the social media outlets where we put our message out and called the Metropolitan Police Department, and then Mr. Sayre was arrested by the Metropolitan Police.
All right, Brian Claypool back with us. Brian, who should be held responsible here? This is a really dangerous guy who got out and caused a lot of havoc in a very short period of time.
Well, this is terrifying. I mean, this is a bomb that could have blown up. I mean, there could have been many people killed by this man, carjacking 2 people. Clearly, the police department, the chief of police, is responsible, and possibly the city council, too, in Fairfax, for contracting out with a private security firm that's not properly trained in dealing with armed and dangerous felons, number one. And number two, the first protocol you follow when you take a suspect, a dangerous suspect like this, to the hospital is they have to have their ankles shackled, and sometimes they have to have their hands cuffed as well while they are being treated. So I can't even fathom why those procedures were not followed.
Yeah, Joey, we talked about this with a former police officer earlier today. I mean, it seems like the proper security measures were not in place for this guy. There were only 2 guards in the hospital. I mean, was that enough?
Apparently not, Yasmin, and certainly one of the good things that'll come out of this, because you always look for the good thing, the takeaway. What you can learn is that measures will be reevaluated so that you don't have bank robbers who could kill people, to Brian's point, on the loose. This could have ended in such a different way. Remember, not only the 2 carjackings that he engaged in and their lives, the security people who were watching him, their life too. Apparently, he used the woman officer who he overpowered as a human shield. So you had better believe, Yasmin, that any protocol in place will be reevaluated. The good news, though, is that this was a very good effort on the part of all local enforcement agencies, the state agency, and other, to get him under control, to protect the public, and to preserve the peace.
Yeah, it's important to know that they were swiftly able to capture him, which is fantastic. He is off the streets. All right, coming up, it's been 20 years since